This is the story of Alishja Podcharska, an upcoming social media influencer who was being stalked by an otherworldly fan. Alishja's heels clicked against the cracked pavement, sharp and rhythmic like a metronome in the night. The autumn wind whipped strands of hair across her face as she pulled her coat tighter, the faint scent of champagne and smoke still clinging to her after the night's celebration. All in all, she was feeling good. She'd just crossed 10 million followers. Finally, after 3 years of posting. She had an exclusive rooftop party, endless photos, laughter, confetti. Her life was on fire. But now, she was walking home, and the city streets were quieter, emptier. She had insisted she didn't need an Uber. "It's just 10 blocks," she'd told her manager. "Let me walk it off." She was still a little tipsy from the rooftop party, just enough champagne to dull her nerves, but not enough to dim her instincts. Somewhere above her, a neon sign buzzed and flickered. Then she noticed him. At first, it was just a figure in the background, a tall man clothed in a black hooded tracksuit, his face swallowed by the shadows of the streetlights. He wasn't close, but he was there. She kept walking, getting faster and faster, but he seemed to keep up with her pace. Every turn she made, he made too. She veered off the main street, hoping to shake him. The alleys here were tight and stacked with the stink of garbage and mildew. No way he'd follow her in here, but he did. His footsteps didn't echo like hers. They didn't crunch on the gravel. They made no sound at all. Alishja dared a glance over her shoulder. He was gone. The alley behind her was empty. She stopped walking. Her heart thudded against her ribs like it wanted out. Her phone was in her purse, but her fingers suddenly felt clumsy, useless. She took a deep breath and kept walking, almost running now. She cut through the small park near her apartment complex. It seemed so quiet, too quiet. The wind stirred the swings. A rusted merry-go-round turned once, slowly, like it had been pushed. Then she heard it, leaves crunching underfoot to her left. She turned sharply. Nothing. Then again to her right. She span like a top on the spot. A figure, just for a second, in the bushes, then nothing. She started running. Branches clawed at her coat as she flew through the overgrown trail at the park's edge. She looked back. Again, no one was in sight, but that absence was worse than seeing him. When she finally reached her apartment building, she bolted inside, slamming the door behind her. Hands trembled as she locked it, checked it twice, and the windows. She laughed nervously as she stood by the curtain, peeking out at the empty field below. Maybe it was just a fan. Just some creep who wanted a selfie. Nothing to panic about. She made her way up to the 14th floor. The elevator lights flickered as she rose, casting her reflection in 100 warped shapes on the steel walls. For a moment, she thought she saw a second reflection behind her. Taller, hulking, no face, just a smooth white surface. She didn't turn around. She didn't dare. Every hair on her slender body was stood up on end. When the elevator doors opened, her floor was empty. The hallway light blinked rapidly. She exited and walked quickly to her door along the narrow hallway, opened it, dashed inside, and locked it behind her. She tossed her heels aside and slumped against the wall. Safe. Or so she thought. She was just about to head to bed when her phone buzzed. A new notification on her latest Instagram story. Heading, home alone. Vibes are immaculate. What on earth was going on? She hadn't posted that. She stared at her phone in horror, cold sweat blooming across her back. There was a new video, too. Shaky footage of her walking through the park, shot from the bushes, zooming in slowly. She stared at the username. It wasn't hers. at realalishafan_001. Her breath caught in her throat. The account had one follower, her. She dropped her phone and backed away from it like it had teeth. Then, the lights in her apartment flickered and went out. She was plunged into darkness facing her wall mirror, and in the reflection from the dark window behind her, a figure began to appear. It was tall, dressed all in black, hood pulled low over a face that wasn't quiet, right? Its skin shimmered as if waxed, like rubber. No eyes, just a stretched, grinning mouth too wide for any human skull that was loosely sewn together with black thread. It tilted its head awkwardly to the left. "Thank you," it whispered in a voice like broken audio, "for letting me follow you." Then it threw back its head, laughing demonically. Alishja's heart was a drumbeat in her ears, the kind that thrums so violently it might crack your skull open. She wasn't sure how long she'd stood frozen to the spot, staring at the reflection of that thing behind her. Its wide, grinning mouth hadn't moved since it stopped laughing, but the air in the room felt too thick, too alive. The corners of the apartment seemed to breathe in and out with it. Her eyes were watering from staring so long. She blinked and he was gone. Her mind raced, frantically searching for some kind of escape. The front door? No, he could be right outside. The balcony? Too high. The bathroom. Her legs felt like lead as she bolted through the dark apartment, her breath shallow and much too fast. She had no idea where she was stepping, just scrambling for the door. She didn't look back, but she could feel him right behind her, like a weight pressing down on her spine, close enough to smell. She reached the bathroom and slammed the door shut. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely turn the lock. Finally, it clicked. Safe. For now, she hoped. But her pulse didn't slow. Her mind refused to calm. She collapsed against the cold tile floor, panting, trying to steady herself. It was the only room with a lock that didn't lead to an exterior door. If she was going to survive this, it was here she'd need to stay. And then, there it was. A sound, soft at first, almost like a whisper, then scratching, nails against wood. She held her breath. The noise was coming from the living room. Whoever was here, whatever it was searching for her. The sound of something moving through her apartment was clearly audible, shuffling, rattling things, tossing aside cushions. She could hear it moving from room to room methodically, almost, as if it was enjoying the search. Alishja squeezed her eyes shut, clutching her arms around her knees. She couldn't stop shaking. What was it? Was it human? Was it even real? She could feel it moving through her home, its presence hanging heavy in the air, like the space itself was bending under its weight. 5 minutes. 10. The search grew more frantic now, louder. A crash of pottery, a drawer slamming open, then slamming shut again. Something, her purse maybe, was tossed across the floor. She flinched. Her thoughts darted to her phone, still sitting on the counter in the other room. Shit! She'd left it out there. The one thing that might let her call for help. But what if it was too late? What if they were already onto her? The door handle rattled. Her breath hitched. She held her breath. It rattled again slightly, then silence. She sat for a few moments listening. Nothing but dead silence. It's gone, she thought. Or was it just waiting? The silence was even worse than the noise. She could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears. The seconds dragged by. Her mind felt like it was breaking apart, unraveling in the eerie silence. And then knock, knock, knock. Her heart nearly stopped. The knocking was slow, methodical, calm, as if the person outside had all the time in the world. Alishja! A voice called out, muffled through the door. It was Mr. Jenkins, her neighbor from next door. He had a gravelly voice and was a kind old man, always looking out for her, even when she didn't ask. He probably heard the noises coming from her apartment. Alishja, you in there? His voice was softer now, concerned. Hey, I saw someone walking around outside your door. Thought I'd check if you were okay. Her mind went blank. She wanted to respond, to shout, to beg for help, but she couldn't. Not when there was a chance it was still out there waiting. What if the thing had seen Mr. Jenkins? Her breath was shallow as she tried to find the courage to speak. Mr. Jenkins? She whispered, just loud enough for him to hear through the door. Please, don't. Don't open the door. Just, please, go. I need to be alone. Please. She could hear him on the other side, hesitant to go. You sure, Alishja? You don't sound all right. Are you in some kind of trouble? She pressed her back harder into the bathroom wall. I'm fine, I swear. I just need some time. But Mr. Jenkins wasn't leaving. She could hear his feet shuffling, the creak of his shoes on the hallway carpet. And then, nothing. Again, she sat listening, but she couldn't hear Mr. Jenkins at all. Then finally, the door handle turned again, a slow, agonizing twist. Alishja, I'm coming in. The front door slowly creaked open and Mr. Jenkins stepped inside. She unlocked the door, but then hesitated to open it. What if that thing is still here? Where are you, Alishja? Called out Mr. Jenkins. I'm in the bathroom, she called back, still unsure if she should open the door or not. I don't like this, she heard him mumbling to himself. I'm coming in, he stated as he turned the handle. She leapt backwards away from the door, sliding across the tiled floor on her backside right into the bathtub. No, she screamed, leaping to her feet, her heart leaping into her throat. Mr. Jenkins, please don't. The door swung open, but there was no one there. For a long moment she stood in shock, looking at the empty doorway. Then she began slowly walking out, calling out for Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins? Hello? She called out nervously, but her apartment was empty. Her things were thrown all over the floor, but there was nobody there. She walked over to the open front door and looked out. The light outside flickered once more on an empty hallway. Alishja stared, confusion flooding her veins. She reached out a hand toward the open door, her fingers trembling. Had Mr. Jenkins left? Had he heard her? But as she peered through the door, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. A small, folded piece of paper was wedged beneath the doorframe. She grabbed it quickly, her hands unsteady as she unfolded it. The note was written in jagged, slanted handwriting. It read, "He's not gone. He's still watching you. I can see him in the shadows." The last line was scrawled erratically, as though whoever had written it had been shaking. There was no signature. But somehow, she knew it wasn't Mr. Jenkins. It was him. The thing that had followed her all the way home. Needless to say, she went straight for her phone, dialing 911 and reporting most of what happened that night. Nothing else happened to Alishja for some time after, but when it did, the situation was worse than you can imagine. However, that was not the only time she'd been stalked. She'd had this fanatic fan who kept leaving her presents on her doorstep last year, until he was issued a restraining order, that is. But there was one other time, and it was just a few weeks prior to this night. It happened in that same park behind her apartment block. Alishja tugged her scarf tighter around her throat as she stepped into the park behind her apartment. The iron gate groaned on its hinges as she passed, loud in the silence, and the night air smelled faintly of wet leaves and earth. Her phone was clutched in one hand, the glow of the screen her only comfort as she scrolled through a sea of congratulatory messages from fans. Just last year, Nobody knew her name. Now, she couldn't post a pic without it going viral. She was halfway down the winding path when something tugged at her attention. A subtle shift, the sense of being observed. She slowed, peering past the dim lamps that lit the walkway, into the deeper shadows of the trees. There between the tangled bush, a figure. Her chest tightened. Was it another fan stalking her? The figure didn't move, not 1 inch, just watched. Its presence was so still it almost seemed sculpted, like a mannequin abandoned in the undergrowth. Alishja's pulse spiked. This was the worst thing about being famous, creepy fans thinking they can just follow you for real. She forced her eyes away, walking faster now, shoes crunching the gravel path. It's nothing, just your imagination. Or maybe some creep hiding there. Just keep moving. But as she neared the exit of the park, she couldn't resist one last glance back. That was when she saw it. No longer half hidden in the brush. The figure stood openly on the path now, draped in a black tracksuit, the hood pulled low over its head. The distance between them seemed wrong, closer than it should have been given the short time she'd looked away. It didn't move toward her. In fact, it didn't move at all. But she could feel it smiling beneath that hood, enjoying the view, no doubt. She turned and quickly hurried up to her block, looking back once again as she reached the front door, but he hadn't followed her that time. This was 2 weeks before the incident we previously explored, and it was another 2 weeks following that when the next one took place. Coincidentally, it also started off in the park. Alishja walked nervously along the public pathway. The park was quiet, way too quiet. Only the wind and the crunch of her own footsteps on the gravel filled the night. She hadn't been through there in 2 weeks, not since that night. That totally creepy night 2 weeks ago when that thing had followed her home, broke into her apartment, and almost caused her a heart attack. She'd been eyeing up the shadows even before entering the gate. She told herself not to look, not to check the bushes again, but when she did, the hooded figure was there, watching, motionless. Her heartbeat doubled instantly. No way, not again. Her throat tightened as she quickened her pace, practically speed-walking out of the park. The air felt thick, charged, as though every tree was leaning closer to listen. By the time she reached her apartment block, she could hear the steady echo of footsteps behind her. Not fast, not slow. Just enough to let her know she was being followed. Her keys slipped in her sweaty hand as she unlocked the door, but she yanked the door open and darted inside, racing for the stairs. She risked a glance back before turning to the next flight. He was already in the lobby. His hooded head tilted slightly as if he was studying the way her body moved, the way her fear made her stumble. Up the stairs she went, 2 at a time, heart hammering, breath burning, and when she reached her floor, he was already there. Peeking around the corner of the corridor, head tilted to the left, mouth sewn tight with black thread, rubbery skin gleaming in the light. Waiting. Alishja's scream broke free as she sprinted down the hall, fumbling with her keys, nearly dropping them before finally getting them into the lock. It clicked, and she shoved herself inside her apartment, slamming the door shut and locking it tight. She stepped back. The silence was instant, suffocating. Then a loud knock on the door. She jumped back. Then another 2 more loud knocks. Her lock rattled. She knew it couldn't be opened without the key, but even that thought wasn't really comforting her right now. The pounding grew heavy, more violent, growing furious, shaking the thin wooden door in its frame. She covered her mouth to hold in the sobs, backing away, her legs quivering like a newborn fawn. Then a voice she recognized cut through. "Hey, get the hell away from there!" It was Mr. Jenkins, the old man from 104B. His voice was hoarse with anger. I'll call the cops, you hear me? Stay away. The knocking stopped. Alishja shuffled back up to the door to see what was going on. Through the peephole, she saw the hooded figure slowly turn to face Jenkins. The air between them felt electric, dangerous. Then, without a word, the figure stepped back and disappeared down the hall. Mr. Jenkins shuffled closer, tapping on her door. You okay in there? Alishja? You don't need to be scared now. He's gone. She pressed herself flat against the wall, shaking her head, though he couldn't see it. She couldn't open the door. What if it wasn't really Jenkins? What if it was just another trick? He lingered a while longer, knocking gently, before muttering to himself and walking away. Only then did she peel herself off the wall and stumble to the bathroom. She turned the shower on, hot water blasting down, steam filling the room. The noise was a comforting, white, rushing sound that drowned out her thoughts. She let the warmth wash over her trembling body, eyes closing for the first time in what felt like hours. Her breathing slowed. She almost felt safe, until she reached out to wipe the steam from the mirror. Her reflection looked back at her, except it wasn't her reflection at all. It was the hooded figure standing directly where she stood, a pale, faceless head beneath the dripping hood. Its mouth, still sewn shut, twitched violently against the black thread, as if it was trying to scream from inside her skin. And behind her, through the glass, she saw the bathroom door click shut. She stumbled back in shock, almost slipping over. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. It was just herself, looking seriously tired. She slunk back under the shower head, thinking she really needed some sleep. The shower eventually ran cold, snapping Alishja out of her daze. She stepped out, water dripping from her hair and eyelashes, wrapping herself quickly in a towel. Steam still fogged the mirror, but she refused to look at it again. That was when she noticed the small piece of folded paper on the floor. It had been slid under the bathroom door, and she hadn't heard a thing. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't even heard anyone come in. The bathroom was right next to the front door, so she should have, but in any case, it should be locked. With trembling hands, she picked it up. The handwriting was jagged, scrawled as if done in haste. "Don't go to sleep tonight. It's watching you," it read. Her heart thundered. Who wrote this? Was it the hooded figure? Was this some cruel game? Or was someone else watching her too? She couldn't stay silent anymore. If she vanished, the world needed to know. So she did what she did best. She went online. Still wrapped in her towel, hair dripping all over the carpet. She set up her phone and started posting stories on Instagram. She explained hastily that something was happening, that she was too afraid to sleep, that she'd keep her fans updated in real time. Within minutes, the responses poured in: support, disbelief, memes, speculation. Her story view count ticked into the tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The hype was electric. But then came the new posts. Not hers. They were from that other account. Creepy videos began appearing, tagged with her name, grainy clips of her walking through the park, still images of her apartment building taken from outside, even a shot of her window, curtains drawn, but unmistakably her window. It had been watching her the whole time. Her hands shook wildly as she hit go live. Her follower count spiked instantly, hundreds of thousands joining in to see what was happening. She tried to keep her voice steady, explaining about the stalker, the notes, the knocking. The chat blew up, hearts, shocked emojis, pleas for her to call the police. Then, without warning, the lights went out. The screen went black. Her audience plunged into darkness with her. She screamed, fumbling for her phone's flashlight, its weak beam cutting through the shadows. The comments exploded. "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, is this real? Girl, run." And then the sound came. the scrape of her window latch turning in the bedroom. The live feed jittered as she swung the flashlight toward the door. She got up slowly and crept to the doorway, looking directly into her bedroom across the hall. The hooded figure slipped into view, climbing through her window like a nightmare given flesh. Millions of people watched in stunned silence as the intruder entered her bedroom. But they didn't see his face. It was too dark, so the camera didn't catch it. Only she did. A faceless white head with sunken black eyes, stitched mouth twitching as if trying to speak, head tilting toward her like a predator about to strike. The phone slipped from her hand as she stepped behind the doorframe, cowering, cold chills running up and down her spine. The figure approached, slowly, jerking unnaturally, head twisting from side to side as it took one step after the other towards the door. Her heartbeat was so fast now, it felt like it would explode at any minute. It came straight across the hallway and stopped in the doorway, mere inches from her, leaning in close, his stitched smile inches from her face. She could feel its breath on her cheek. The scent of rotting fish filled her nostrils, turning her stomach instantly. Alishja screamed so loud the mic clipped. Then she turned, dropping to her knees and vomiting onto the floor. When she turned back, that thing was holding her phone up and filming her. She crawled away from the light, holding up her hand to cover her face, feeling a mixture of fear with a hint of embarrassment. That creature laughed at her from behind the camera, that eerie, demonic chuckling it had made weeks before, and that's when he entered, her knight in shining armor. The stitched-mouthed face had just leaned out from behind her phone when the window shattered. Glass rained across her bedroom, glittering in the harsh beam of her phone's light as it turned to film the new intruder. A figure in dark tactical gear rolled through the opening, hitting the floor hard, but rising instantly with his weapon already raised. The gunshot thundered, deafening Alishja. The hooded creature's head snapped back in a spray of ash, but it didn't fall. No. Instead, with inhuman speed, it lunged. He fired again, the bullet ripping right through its shoulder and hitting the wall. But it still kept running. The hunter grunted as it slammed into him, knocking the weapon sideways. They both crashed onto the bed and went over, out of view. Her phone lay on the floor in the hallway where it had dropped it. The live stream filled with the sounds of violence. Flesh pounding against plaster, grunts and strangled growls, the screech of furniture being shoved aside. Alishja quickly grabbed her phone and scrambled back against the wall, phone clutched to her chest, flashlight beam darting wildly. Through the bedroom doorway, she could glimpse the fight in snatches. The hooded figure pinned the hunter against the floor, its long, pale hands clawing for his throat. Its stitched mouth writhed as if the threads might snap. The hunter struggled, pulling a knife from his belt and slashing across the thing's arm. Black, powdery residue spilled out instead of blood. It shrieked soundlessly, muffled by its sewn mouth, but the noise was felt, vibrating through Alishja's bones. He slashed at it again, this time across the chest. It shrieked once more and ducked back from a third attack. The hunter took that opportunity to roll clear, but as he did, that thing jerked forward, landing on top of his legs, hands grabbing at his wrists. He pulled free from its grasp and kicked it in the throat. It didn't flinch from the blow. No, it launched straight back at him, twisting supernaturally to avoid more kicks as the hunter tried to fend it off. It just swiped his legs aside, diving on top of him and slamming both fists into his chest. He grunted like a boar, then grabbed its arms, pushing it sideways. However, it grabbed his vest at the same time and pulled him along with it. They both rolled around on the floor, trading blows. The faceless man clawed at his throat, trying to strangle him, while he punched, kicked, and slashed at its arms. Eventually, the hunter twisted free, kicking it off, rolling back, and snatched his gun again off the floor. For a moment, the light beam caught under the hood. that blank, pale face, that grotesque sewn smile, just as it loomed over him once more. The shot went off at point-blank range. This time, the bullet tore straight through its head. The faceless man staggered, body convulsing, before it began to unravel. Its hood fell limp as its entire form collapsed into drifting ash, crumbling into nothing and vanishing into thin air. Silence rushed in, broken only by Alishja's ragged breathing and the faint hum of her live-stream chat exploding into chaos. The hunter stayed kneeling for a moment, catching his breath. Then, as though aware millions were watching, he turned his face away from the phone, pulled something from his coat, and tossed it onto her desk. Then, without a word, he vaulted back out the window, disappearing into the night. Alishja didn't move at first. She couldn't. What she'd just witnessed was unreal. Then, as she calmed down, she became curious about what he'd put on her desk, so she got up and nervously crept into the bedroom. Her phone shook in her hands as she slowly shifted the camera down to this folded scrap of paper laid on her keyboard. She reached out, trembling, picked it up, and opened it. It was that same scrawled handwriting as the others. "Thank you. You made it easier to find it. Sleep well tonight." There was a childlike drawing of a smiley emoji at the bottom, which made her half smile. She looked down to see a black tracksuit laid bunched up on the floor where it fell. She wasn't touching that. The police could have it. Although, she did get a shot of it before calling them. The morning after felt like a different planet. Her phone buzzed nonstop, notifications stacking so fast the screen stuttered. Clips of the live stream ripped through feeds and news sites, the window shattering. The first shot, the scuffle half seen through the doorway, the final blast that turned the thing to dust. Some called it real. A louder, nastier chorus insisted it was staged. Fans sent prayers and trembling hearts. Trolls sent hashtags and conspiracy threads. Strangers offered to hire bodyguards. Strangers also sent venom and screenshots of old videos, claiming she'd faked everything for fame. A handful of accounts, anonymous, grainy, started posting pictures of her building and the path through the park, tagged with dates and an invitation. "See you tonight." Alishja read everything and felt nothing and everything all at once. She tried to compose herself, to answer the messages. Thank yous, please to explain more about the creature, accusations of fraud. But every reply she typed came out small and hollow. Her voice notes to friends ended with long pauses. Mr. Jenkins knocked once on her door just to make sure she was breathing. She opened a crack and let him stare at her like a worried parent, offering stale biscuits and an awkward smile. She just nodded at his words, not really listening. He stopped coming after a few days. The replay of that night lived in her head like a looping advertisement. The noise of the glass, the shape of the hunter, the way the thing had looked at her like it was playing a game. She watched the clip until the pixels blurred, until the chat sped by with new theories. Some people celebrated, and some demanded proof the hunter even existed. A few speculated about what the note said. "Thank you. You made it easier to find it." They turned that sentence into slogans and merch mock-ups. Even after the ash, after the night, the world wanted a story it could own. She sat all day, blankly staring at her phone. By evening, she drifted to the bathroom to wash the day off. Steam rose, fogging the mirror the way it always did. She watched the condensation beat up and run, slow rivulets tracing the glass. The apartment felt empty and close, the quiet keyed too high. Outside, somewhere down the block, a siren wailed and then faded into the distance. She raised a hand and wiped at the glass. For a moment, she only saw her own tired face, pale with dark circles, the tight lines of someone who'd been held underwater and then given air. And the reflection wavered, like heat over asphalt, and something shifted behind it. She froze. The bathroom was small. She could see the doorway in the mirror, the hallway beyond. In the glass, just out of the angle she could see directly, a hooded shape stood with its head tilted. Blank, pale, mouth threaded with black. It didn't move, only watched. The hairs along her arms rose. Her breath made a cloud in front of the mirror. She blinked, but the figure remained. Alishja swallowed hard. She took a step back, and in the same motion the reflection reached forward slowly, patiently, its thread tangled lips parting as if in a smile that had nothing to do with joy. The rest of her body wanted to flee. Some part of her that had kept vigil for nights wanted to keep watching, to prove her eyes weren't lying. She lifted the towel from her shoulder, fingers numb, and wiped the glass again. The smudge of her fingertips smeared, then cleared. For the briefest instant, she saw only herself. Then, as if sewn into the glass, the reflection's mouth twitched, and the black thread gleamed like fresh stitches across her own mouth. She tried to speak, but her mouth wouldn't open. Then her head began to swim with visions. Scenes from that night danced through her mind. She didn't hear the world anymore, the internet, her phone, or Mr. Jenkins' knock on her door. She only heard the slow, wet sound of something's mouth smiling through thread in the mirror, while she watched her reflection reshaping. She stepped forward. The reflection stepped forward too. She stepped back again, and so did the figure. Her entire face had transformed at that point. She screamed silently inside her own mind as her eyes rapidly darkened. And the last thing she saw before everything cut to a clean, impossible black was the slow, cruel curl of a thread-sewn smile aimed right at her. As always, thank you all for listening. I do hope you were entertained. Please drop a like, it really helps, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories. Until next time, sleep tight.